Today on Unsupervised Learning, we had HeyGen CEO Joshua Shu on the podcast. HeyGen recently raised $60 million at a $500 million valuation from investors like Benchmark, Thrive, and others. And Joshua had some really interesting perspectives on how enterprises are using AI video tools today. He also hit on how HeyGen's thought about security guidelines when it comes to voice cloning, as well as the dilemma faced by platforms like TikTok as they balance their content creators and AI-generated content. He also hit on future areas for HeyGen's product expansion. I think folks are really going to enjoy this episode. Without further ado, here's Joshua. Well, Joshua, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Amazing. Well, I was thinking different places to start. And I think one thing I'd love to know is what it's like to be on the inside of a company like HeyGen when you really go viral. And I feel like there's been all these moments in HeyGen's history probably where that's happened. The one that I feel like I was first exposed to, I believe, was when I think Elon and others started dubbing the speech from the president of Argentina at the World Economic Forum and putting it in different languages. What is it like to be in the inside of HeyGen when something like that happens?
Yeah, sure. It was definitely very exciting. So that people start to appreciate the value of the product and also seeing the magic happen. Right. I always had talked to my team about that. We're building the AI product. We're inventing the AI experience, like disrupting the old way of creating video, creating content. And I think our role is more like, a magician, And I think with all these different areas of AI technology evolving, I think there's a many opportunity for us to build a magic moment. And, I think the one you mentioned about video translation dubbing was a magic moment that when you actually experience that, people can actually, in front of a camera, they can speak into different languages with a natural voice and then also the facial expression on that.
Did you have any warning that was coming, or you just wake up and open Twitter one day and you're exploding?
No, we didn't know. I guess we were pretty much like in the heads down shipping mode. And we just keep shipping the things that we think is cool. But I think one thing we know that internally is that as long as you keep shipping, keep improving the product experience, keep listening to the customer, and ultimately you would have a moment that actually hitting the market. Yeah.
What was the first magic moment for you with HeyGen product?
It was definitely the moment when I created my first avatar.
Yeah.
And then when I was watching myself that speaking in front of a screen, I think that feels very magical. And I think some other magic moment I would say when you actually start, putting your avatar into day-to-day use, right? Give you one example is that there was a time I want to share a product update email internally to the team. And instead of filming myself, I have a script ready and then have a ChatGPT polish that a little bit and put it into my avatar. And then I can generate the video that way. It felt much, much easier. And I don't have to jump on the camera to record it anymore. And that was, amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering whether you were going to show up to the podcast or whether, there was going to be an avatar with a script. But I guess I'm glad to have gotten you in person.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how you describe, where we are in AI for creative tools right now. What is, if you were to kind of set context for our listeners, what is possible right now? What's still kind of science fiction and not yet possible? How do you think about kind of where we are?
Yeah, so first of all, HeyGen is an AI video platform that helps people to create, localize and personalize the video. Right? The way how I look at it is like this. In the past or even today, majority of the video production is actually, first of all, we need to use camera to film it, what we do over here. And then that is sort of the first step. The second step, we take the footage out of it and then do some editing, right? Do some post-production as well. So that was the two main steps in order to produce a great video. And, always start with the camera, started with the footage. But I think with generative AI, one thing would be changed. I think now it is actually possible to generate the footage from using AI instead of having the camera to film it.
Right.
And when we started the company initially, the mission was to actually replace the camera, right? And because we felt that there's still many people, many businesses, they don't have access to expensive camera, or for individuals, someone maybe just camera shy or being an introvert, and they're not comfortable in speaking in front of camera. Now we can have AI to really help that process, like making 10x faster, 10x cheaper using AI to generate the footage.
And when you started things, was it like, did you feel like, yeah, these avatar models are ready, or like these capabilities are ready to go, or was it kind of a bet on, where things were headed?
No, I think, it was definitely, when we started the company, there was not a such term called generative AI. It's more coming from a vision and a belief that technology will actually ultimately solve the problem in terms of generating the video. And, I have always have believed in that, as long as a video can be encoded into a computer, that means it's just a 0 or 1 encoding. It's a binary format, right? Then, you always have a way to figure that out, have a machine to learn about it and generate that. And maybe coming back to the point that I think the new way we imagine of how a video can be made is that you generate the footage. And even the whole editing experience could be very different, right? So when we look at today's editor, they're mostly timeline editor, right?
Yep.
And then you have a multiple layer in the timeline. And then, the whole point of the reason why a timeline editor exists, it was actually because of the camera was very expensive, right? Because camera was expensive, we when we film the footage, you need to take it 10 times and 20 clips and stuff like that. And then you import all of them into a timeline editor. You pick up the best one, do some editing. But the thing is that once you can actually generate the footage now, you no longer need to actually, rely on the timeline editor again. So I would imagine that in the future, near future actually, the whole editing experience will be vastly different. And, we may not need to operate on the timeline. Yeah.
What do you think it looks like in the future?
Obviously, we are still exploring that. Some of the very exciting industry progress on that would be, now you can generate a video using text, right? From a text to, a video output. And, I think it would be a combination of different UX, like writing the script, editing it as a documentation, having different sorts of UX to navigate through on the 2D camera.
How do you kind of prioritize across everything one can do with a video? How do you prioritize where to focus?
I would say, it comes back to the original point, right? We are building a magic moment.
Yeah.
We want to invent a way how we can, create a video for customers. And I think what's very, very important is that does your magic work? And, I think it comes down to really on the topic around AI quality, right? So when we say about this new workflow, this new technology can replace the old workflow in terms of filming the footage. Can this generative footage actually replace that camera process? So it always comes down to the AI quality. And, when we say about quality, about the model, the AI model, it's not only about solving, I would say, a mathematical problem, because, when you have a better loss function, it doesn't actually have to necessarily make your video look great, right? I think what does make the video look great has many different aspects, like for example, the footage of the lighting, the naturalism on the person, how they speak, whether they actually, have the body motion and gesture matching the script, that the content they want to represent. And all those comes down to the quality of the video. I think that's always the number one focus for us.
How do you evaluate those models and figure out if you're moving in that right direction, given it seems somewhat subjective, or at least, requiring some pretty substantial aesthetic tastes?
Yeah, I think I would say it is a very tough question. And, I think usually it comes down to we being a team, internally, we need to be very, very good at that, right? And, the question I will always push everybody in the company, including myself, is that, all right, can you actually build a great avatar and that you are happy with, that you will be using that in your day-to-day work? And I think that as ethics specs are somewhat subjective, but also, once you actually get engaged on those type of problem every day, you kind of have developed some sense.
So how do customers use HeyGen today? Obviously, it's such a broadly applicable tool. What are kind of the main use cases you see?
Sure. We have over 40,000 customers on the platform today.
Yeah.
And they mainly use for 3 main use cases: create, localize, and personalize. Right. When we say about create, they can create the avatar or select the, one of the stock avatar we have on the product and type the text and create a video, and without having rely on the camera anymore. And the second biggest use case is localize, and people can take the existing video, the non-HeyGen video, and we can help them to localize into more than 175 different languages and dialects, and still keeping the voice tone, the facial expression, and the person, and apply the lip sync to that. And the last piece is about personalization, right? And now you can create one video, but you can actually use HeyGen to personalize that particular video into more than over 100,000 different variations, depending on who is the customer, which is the industry they're working on, what are the problems they are facing, and you can personalize the video messaging the same way as you personalize the email.
Yeah. One thing I think is interesting for creative tool companies is it feels like sometimes there's this tension between, building for the most cutting edge, filmmaker, like artist types versus, your average person in marketing that, never really plays around with video tools. How do you guys think about like that, building for your very sophisticated users versus the fact that anyone can pick it up and figure it out?
I think, one thing to call out, HeyGen is not for, it's not built for the professional video editor who already have access to camera, who already have the skill set to actually making the video editing on their own using some sophisticated softwares. HeyGen is actually for the rest of the 99% of the user who are not professional player, we call that. And people, I think one example you gave is a great, like the content person, right?
Yeah.
And like marketer, they usually produce the content, write the script, but they may not necessarily have the skill set to actually produce the video. And HeyGen is the tool to actually help those people to enable that. And our mission is to actually want to, enable the visual storytelling to everybody. And, especially for the people who doesn't have access to expensive camera, who doesn't know how to use the sophisticated video software.
I think, an interesting challenge folks face in your situation is just teaching, users how to do an entirely net new thing. Like, I think a lot of AI products have this challenge.
Yeah.
How have you thought about like when that marketing person opens HeyGen for the first time, what have you learned, I guess, about making it as easy as possible for them to figure out, it's a new way of doing things. Maybe they haven't used an avatar before. They don't know the capabilities. What have you kind of learned doing that now for a few years?
Yeah, I think, it was a journey that in the very beginning, we were very, very focused on in terms of like presenting the magic, right? So this is possible. I think, there's a lot of work around telling people what it is possible today and what does it look like today, and where is the technology at? Because HeyGen is a very horizontal platform, and we have many, many different use cases, like ranging from marketing, sales, support, customer success, and then also with a lot of training, internal, and as well as content creators. And it is a important effort that actually for us to invest on, showing case what are the different use cases in different verticals. Yeah.
Right. And so ideally, I guess if you're a new user, you try to get them to their use case as fast as possible and then show them kind of one of these magic moments.
Yeah.
I guess like there's a lot of folks, I feel like the avatar space has really taken off over the last year or so. And there's a bunch of companies in the space. Like, how have you, what actually differentiates things on like the model layer? I mean, you talked about kind of realism and this feeling, being able to convey emotion and whatnot, but would be helpful as you think about like what makes a good avatar and what's required from a technical perspective to make that happen.
I think it's really centralized around one question. Is this footage engaging, right? And, there's because ultimately we will build this video and share with someone else. And I think especially in the business context, the purpose of a video in the business role is to actually deliver a message effectively, right? If people jump off right after 3 seconds, that means that message is not effective. Engaging is one aspect that we keep thinking about. Expression is important to get it engaging, and I think the mental model we had is that we don't always talk about speak with our mouth movement. We actually speak together with our head movement, our eyebrow, and our body motion and gesture together, right? That is actually the most challenging part in the puzzle. How do you actually coordinate all these different pieces together and, kind of integrate the system together to build an engaging experience together?
How do you actually build that model? Is there a lot of just like watching video footage of people speaking, or like how do you go about training a really good avatar model? Hey folks, Jacob here. Just taking a quick break from our episode with Joshua to let you know that we run a ton of really interesting episodes on unsupervised learning with founders and cutting edge thinkers in AI. If you're enjoying this episode, please consider sharing with a friend. We're always trying to get the word out about the podcast. And now back to Joshua. How do you go about training a really good avatar model?
First of all, we build the entire video layer in-house. And we have a dedicated research team building all the avatar models, not only lip sync, but also driving a lot of the body motion as well as rendering the full body as well. We actually recently rolled our Avatar 3.0 that was actually not only built on rendering the face, actually it was a model rendering the entire body, right? And I think what is very important over there is that when you actually build up the whole solution out there, it is quite important to notice that essentially, I think the process could be looked like this. And, it's just like, assuming there's a person sitting here, he's watching a lot of a talking video every single day, right? And then I think the point was that, all right, cool. Then can you actually figure out a way to reproduce those type of content? And I think that learning process will be same for the AI model as well. I think data is actually one of the biggest piece that the puzzle we need to solve. And also, I think continuously improve the model architecture to being able to capture those like variants, capture those dimensions and integrate them together.
How do you think about kind of, this one really engaging avatar model versus, there's many different ways to be engaging?
Yeah, sure. So I think if we roll it back, right? So I think the simplest way to create an avatar, actually you could actually use a photo, right? Yeah. But the problem with the photo is that, let's say I put my photo and create an avatar, and the AI model would not be able to figure out how I talk, right? I usually talk about, things like when I move the gesture like this way, or, my facial expression is a little bit different than other people. And, that's why we introduced something called, the video avatar, where you actually need to submit the footage. And I think the idea was that the AI model will mimic the whole behavior of you speaking inside that footage. And I think that personalization came from that particular.
Yeah, it's amazing how fast you get it. I feel like there's not much you need to upload to.
Yeah. And we usually require from 30 seconds to 2 minutes, and that will be good enough for us to really learn about your talking style. And when I say talking style, right, not only about how you move your mouth, but also everything together. We are also in the process of having a larger model to really capture more footage there, so that we can capture the different mode that you might have, like for example the presentation mode, right? And like interview mode, right? And then maybe something else when you have and then really build up that thing inside the the AI model itself, and then the questions comes from okay, how does customer can use that particular AI model? Obviously we will provide control where you can use customer can select which mode you want. And I think another thing it is very possible with AI today is that you can kind of figure out and at least build it as a recommendation for customer based on the script, based on the content they want to talk about. And then you can kind of like adaptively changing the avatar mode and behavior inside the video.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I feel like the fact that you made these models more engaging, when avatars first came out, I feel like it was just for learning and development, where it was like the alternative was so boring that like it didn't really matter how engaging it was. It was going to be better than reading a bunch of learning and development things. But now, obviously, you've been able to expand use cases to marketing and a whole host of other things. One other area of potential expansion that I think is really interesting is today a lot of this is asynchronous, right? And I think the potential of kind of like synchronous generative streaming is really interesting.
Yeah.
Obviously, I imagine that is technically quite challenging.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if you talk a little bit about some of the technical challenges there, and then also, let's say we solve those, kind of the world you see if we're able to get to synchronous.
Yeah. So first of all, we actually have the interactive avatar version as a beta version on the product today, where you can actually upgrade your avatar into an interactive version of avatar, where you can actually send your avatar into attending some of the Zoom meetings and being able to interact in the real time, right? I think some of the challenging, you're right. Once you hit the quality bar, and then the next question is about the performance. And I think obviously the model will become bigger and become bigger and bigger. And I think the model architecture will be more complicated. And the challenge is more around how to navigate through that, keep optimizing the inference speed over that side. But I do think that will bring a whole new use cases. If you look at a lot of advertising platform today, like Facebook, Google, when I look at the same video ads, even though we get recommended into different ads, but when we look at the same one from the same brand, we always are looking at the same video. A better way to actually utilize that experience is that what if we can look at the different video based on our preference, based on our watch history, right?
But it seems like basically to render this on the fly, you're saying essentially today these are like bigger models that it's hard to run inference on that fast to get the models to generate that.
Yeah, but I think that is definitely a bit technical challenging. It's a very challenging problem. But I think I'm very optimistic about that. Within 12 months from now, I think a lot of this technology will actually be able to run in real time, and and even some of them will be able to run in real time on device.
What about like full body movement? I know that's obviously been another area you've been focused on. It seems like you've done a lot there. Like, talk a bit about some of the challenges associated with doing that and kind of where you guys are today.
Yeah, sure. So I think let me just circle back why the full body rendering, full body avatar is very important. Again, it just comes back to how do we define, what a human presenter, is engaging, right? I think the body motion, body gesture is actually pretty important out there. And I mentioned a bit earlier that the 3.0 version of the HeyGen avatar is actually a full body rendering.
Yeah.
And we have not included gesture yet, but that will be pretty much the next step from that. I think the challenging would be more around. I think that's just like in general a new area. I don't think we have a lot of data. We have really understand the model, what's the right model architecture to capture that. But ultimately, it comes back to the thing that it is 0 or 1 or encoding. We will always have a way to figure that out.
So obviously, there's a lot of folks working on kind of pure text to video models, like obviously the Sora folks and Pika and others. How does that kind of intersect with what you guys are doing long term? Can you imagine a world in which they complement each other, or is it like, do you think you both go and expand into what each other's doing, or how do those two kind of live alongside each other long term?
Yeah, sure. So the way how I look at it is that, like, first of all, at HeyGen, we focus primarily in the business videos, right? So when I try to look at it, in order to solve the video generation for the business context, and there were two paths to get there, in my opinion. One path is that, we sort of like generate the entire video from end to end. And then the generation unit would be pixel by pixel, right?
Yeah.
And then frame by frame. And that's probably some of the text to video technology to talk about. And I think there's another path is that, you build an orchestration engine and sort of like, being able to capture text, script, voice, sound, music, avatar footage as A-roll, and some of the B-roll generation all together. And we believe in the second approach because that provides more, control, consistency, as well as the quality. And when we talk about the business video, right, what does the brand or enterprise or a business want in terms of video? They exactly want control, consistency, and quality. And I think this second part in terms of a technical approach will allow us to be able to deliver, much better experience on that. I mean, obviously, especially when we talk about control, yeah, we can talk about that. You can control the video or even image, right, using a prompt. But actually, a better user interface is probably using a mouse to handle that on the 2D dimension of a camera. So I would see that, in this case, we would work with this all the text to video partners closely because that is actually important piece of the system where we take that as a B-roll, but we kind of build the orchestration engine on the top, and that service layer that interact with the customer directly.
That's so interesting. So it's yet another input into, you might want an avatar for something, some generative scene for something else. And, you might want to tailor a voice for something. And basically you guys you'll build some of these features yourself. You'll kind of input in the text to video that's the best and kind of orchestrate across all of it to provide this really holistic video experience.
Yeah.
We've talked about kind of like full body, synchronous, text to video. Any other areas that you're paying attention to that you're like, in the next 6-12 months that might change this kind of video space a lot?
I think another important piece, I would say, it is technically possible, but I think the experience has not really, came up to the market yet. Is really the brand personalization layer, right? When I say that is, we obviously, let's say we are using ChatGPT today, right? You can actually give it a prompt that, hey, give all the context about the company. Right. And then the ChatGPT will help you to write the script in your brand tone. And then, already realize that what's the context, what's the background, what's the history of the company, and what's the product. And that is still not possible with the video today, right? So I think, one important piece of the puzzle was actually to disassemble the video into different components. And then when you try to assemble them together in the final video format, I think that is the brand personalization you can keep in. And one great experience would look like would be, hey, we just take a URL or look at some of the past video that the company made, and sort of like the AI model will learn what's the color tone, what's the style, what are the opening and video clip, and it can sort of like bake all this element into the final assemble process. I think that would be another very exciting feature.
Yeah. How would you do that?
I guess very similar to the ChatGPT context window. Yeah. Right. You sort of like you either spin up the models, fine tune, or either you have a context window. But really, I think the underlying idea was that you want to have some user input as a memory, and then you can bake that into embedding so that it can feed that into the AI model.
One thing I'm interested for your thoughts on, I feel like a lot of time in the AI startup world, the people are like, well, the incumbents are so well positioned to do this, they'll get around to it. And, obviously in your world, you compete with some pretty impressive incumbents. Obviously your former employer in Snap, there's TikTok and other folks that are kind of like prosumer video focused. Obviously when you were leaving Snap, I'm sure you thought about you could build these features within Snap or in a startup. How do you think about like the way those platforms evolve where they have the distribution already versus kind of, what you guys are able to do at HeyGen?
The way how we look at the whole video space or generally the creative content space, right? I think we are at the stage on the creative tools stage. But I think when we look at the distribution, when we look at the platform piece, they're still owned by lots of past incumbent developer, especially evolved in the mobile camera phrase. And the way how I look at it is that first of all, it's about who's the customer. And initially, when we talk about building the video creation tools, it was for people that has the camera. Right. They are relatively professional and advanced in terms of using sophisticated editing tools. But now I think HeyGen is really built for people, the content people, the people who don't have access to those things. And I think the product experience will be majority very different, right? And there's definitely many opportunity out there for us to build a whole new experience for those type of people. I think the way how we look at it is that there will be, it's not really competing on the old market, but it's actually opened up there's a new market opportunity that, in this case, startup and incumbent, we both want to work on that. And I guess it will be really depends on how a different product can capture the customer needs and build a product feature that, satisfy the customer what they want.
And it seems like both Snapchat and TikTok have been pretty focused also on some similar, end markets and avatars and whatnot. Like, what do you think of what they've done so far? Do you think the focuses are the same, or do you think they kind of diverge at some point?
The way how we look at it is that I think when we talk about some of the incumbents, especially vertical video and short form video platform, right? I think the key idea was to unlock creators that can, easily create a video using the mobile camera. I think that was the key, value that drives that. And I think the key value for a new platform like us is that it's not about that, right? Because we want to make the camera obsolete, and we actually want to be enabling the video creation experience without the camera. And I think there would be always a dilemma for some of the platform. I'll give one example is that assuming, like obviously a lot of the platform are built for centralized around creator, right? But now this technology is actually not for the creator who actually have access to a camera. And assuming there's a 10% of the content that are being generated on AI today, and how would people rank those content? How would people recommend those content compared to the rest of the 90% of the camera based? I mean, the question would be, all right, we can mix them together, but what if that ratio become 50%, 50%? That means that if you kind of run these two content together, that means that the existing content creator will be vastly, getting less views, getting less attention from customer, right? And that in that case, if that stage arrived, then we would have to build up a new platform really for the AI generated content. I think that's where the new opportunity for a new platform will emerge.
It's so interesting because basically, to your point, the TikToks of the world, they are in service of their content creators and, are promising a platform that if, they're competitive places to get the Charli D'Amelio's of the world to post, and they say, hey, you post here, you'll get the biggest reach, the most exposure, and they'll face some dilemma as the AI content gets more popular of, do we promote this or do we suppress it because it directly competes? So do you think ultimately you guys have a consumption platform as well for all this AI generated content?
That is not the mission. We just want to build a great creative tools to enable everybody have access to visual storytelling. But I would say we will continue to see that that's possible as a new opportunity for new platform emerge. I guess we will see.
What have you learned? And obviously, you guys have made, I think, this big enterprise push in the last 3-6 months. It seems like it's going very well. What have you learned in servicing those customers? Any things you were surprised by that you needed to do in the product, or things you didn't expect?
I think one piece about enterprise customers, I think the quality requirement there is much higher, right?
Yeah.
And in terms of a brand consistency, in terms of the quality of the output of the video, that's one. And obviously that aligned with our product strategy. We have been always really focused on that. I think another very important piece for really the enterprise world is that it's about integrating the technology and the product into the day-to-day workflow. There will be many, mixing pieces about the integration and workflow we are actively working on.
What are some of the integrations that end up being most important?
I think it really depends on which use case we're talking about. If we're talking about marketing, I think integrating with existing CRM, existing go-to-market tools are very important, right? I mean, in fact, we actually was on at HubSpot inbound last week. We were announcing the partnership, and we built some of the integration and app integrating into the app ecosystem of HubSpot, so that people can actually using HeyGen as a tool together with their marketing product, with their CRM product together. I think that's one thing that would dramatically improve the customer experience that they can.
And that's kind of pulling data both for the context to provide HeyGen, but then also making it really easy to kind of ship a HeyGen.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing I feel like you've been super thoughtful on is the kind of security side of this. And, I think you guys have been, really forward in some of your guidelines around voice and, what you're able to do and not do. I'd love to hear just how you've thought about that. It seems like from the outside sometimes that especially in the prosumer world, the people that push the boundaries the most and let you do, the Donald Trump voice or the Taylor Swift voice or whatever it is, end up getting the most eyeballs or something. And you guys have obviously thought about this a lot. Talk to me about how you've thought about that over time and the decision to, I guess, if it's impacted you basically not to go up to the line or maybe even past it.
First of all, trust and safety is critical for our business. We are serving some of the largest enterprise customers, and it is really important for us to having the trust and safety implemented correctly in the platform. So the way how we really look at it is that there's two big pieces about the trust and safety work at HeyGen. One is about creating your avatar. The other one is about the video content you're creating, right? So for every single avatar that people are creating on HeyGen, we will always require a consent, a video consent format. And we have advanced AI to actually match the consent. Actually, it's the same person as the footage. And meanwhile, we also have a dynamic generated passcode where it kind of expire every 10 seconds or 15 seconds, so that really giving a secure layer there to protect that, so that which means that it is almost impossible for people to actually creating someone's avatar without their consent. And that's one. And meanwhile, we also have build up the moderation team. Not only will be reviewed by AI, but also have a moderation team actually doing human reviews on their footage to making sure everything is expected. And that's one piece. I think another piece is about we have our platform moderation policy that we do not allow hate speech, misinformation, fraudulent, any political campaign and information like that. And obviously, it's a hybrid solution between the AI model review as well as the moderation team human review, and just making sure everything, all the content being produced on HeyGen compile with our policy.
What about like IP partnerships? Like, how does that play in here? Like, I don't know, you could imagine over time, like actors giving their permission to use their voices, or I don't know, fictional characters. People want Iron Man or whatnot. Like,
yeah.
How have you thought about that today, and where do you kind of think that space goes?
Obviously, we have a partnership with some of the existing actors, and they build their avatar on HeyGen, so that that's part of the stock avatar we have. And we haven't explored much about around the IP, but I think one thing would be very interesting to explore is that, especially now that you can generate a new voice, right? You can generate a new person, that AI generative version, and that could become the future IP actually. Yeah. And especially, I'm not sure. Look at that the latest model from image generation. It could actually persist the consistency across different generations, and which means that open up a whole new possibility for people to actually generate a new IP. And what if we turn those image or into video, right? And then there's a new role out there, and that I guess we're very excited to explore.
Yeah, these like AI influencers. I guess there's that one Michaela, I think, on Instagram for a while that was pretty popular.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much you can do with these AI influencers. It'll be interesting to see if those emerge. Do you have any on the platform yet, or not yet?
No, not yet. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I'm also curious that a lot of founders think about is, you're a hot AI company. I'm sure people are always trying to throw money at you, and you probably have access to endless amounts of fundraising. How have you thought about like the appropriate amount to raise, and how capital intensive of a business HeyGen ends up being? And I feel like a lot of folks are trying to figure this out now, where there's a lot of capital available.
I think especially in the whole AI category, some of the biggest cost factor would be actually around GPU and talent, and I think that's one. But I think one thing I have learned quite different. I think when we look at the finance model about a software company, right, and it's actually very different from the AI category, in my opinion, right? So when we sell software, your marginal cost is close to zero, and on serving additional customers. But it's not true for AI, because you are actually consuming a lot more GPU compute in that case. And I mean, obviously GPU is not zero today, right? And I think that's one thing that's different. But I think another thing I want to call out is that with all this AI technology evolving, the individual employee also gets much more efficient than before, right? I mean, I personally get much more things done with ChatGPT helping me around. And
and it sounds like HeyGen for your product updates and whatnot internally.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What was funny is that I was requested on the customer testimonial yesterday, and I did it with my avatar, right? So that I don't have to like film it myself anymore. But I'm trying to say that I think there's some new generation company that is really AI native, and which also means that the teams are also AI native. It gets much more efficient, right? And I think especially if you look at some of the earlier player in the AI space, the trajectory of growth is like insane, right? Oh. And I think one example we also look at ChatGPT get to 100 million user, put extremely fast than any of the past company in the past, right? And I think the go-to-market will be also accelerated because the whole industry are ever excited about AI. So I would say, surprisingly, we actually require less capital to build a great AI company.
Because I imagine one thing you could do is, have a very generous free tier, which you have free tier, but I feel like companies like yourselves there's always this tension of like, you face inference cost every time people run these models, but like people discover the magic moments from it for being free, and so I could imagine you could just like make the free tier even more, like just bombard the market with as much HeyGen as possible. Like, obviously you do some of that, but how have you thought about that?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting idea. I think if you look at some of the LLM space, right? I think LLM definitely have a free offering.
Totally.
Obviously, we have our free tier as well. And I guess, at some point, you will start to see a marginal gain as you open up more free usage. And I guess we haven't really, focused on exploring that yet. But I guess that would be very interesting idea.
Is there anything that like you don't do today because the inference costs are too expensive? Like you have the technical capabilities, but you're like, God, because inference seems to come down, a dramatic amount every 6 months. Like, is there something you're waiting for to get a bit cheaper?
We don't wait. Yeah. We always build a product ahead of 12 months.
Yeah.
Like I give one example is that, and when we design the product today, and the decision is made based on the future of 12 months, what are the model capability? This one, and what is the cost, and what are the different pieces of the puzzle would evolve together. So so I guess we actually always build ahead.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we always like to end our interviews with a quickfire round where we get your thoughts on some broad questions.
Sure.
Maybe to start would be, what's one thing that's overhyped and one thing that's underhyped in AI today?
I think overhyped it is the speed in terms of like really getting AI into playing a huge value in some of the business and enterprise, right? I think underhype is actually the final impact of that. And I think we always tend to, when an innovative technology like emerge, you always think that it's like it should be go much faster than we expected. But I think that's like something it happened in Asia, in my opinion.
Yeah. What's something you've like changed your mind on since starting HeyGen?
I mean, there's many things I changed my mind. I would say, just like get a lot of learning along the way, alongside the journey. But since we are very technical, talking about a lot of technical pieces today, I think I can give one example on the technical piece. And I think in the early, probably 2021, the whole metaverse was a bit hype at that time, right? And I mean, obviously, there's a huge advancement in terms of the 3D, graphics technology. And because essentially, when we try to solve the problem about video generation, there's also two ways of solving that, right? One is that generating pixel by pixel, and the other one is actually building the 3D model layer as the underlying, guiding model first, and then you put pixel on top of that. And I think since the stable diffusion, I think that completely changed my mind. We invest on 3D technology very early on, and was trying to explore that path. But when I saw stable diffusion, I just realized that all right, this technology, this technical part is going to go much, much faster because it will allow you to be able to train on the large scale of data. And I think that was one thing we have been changed in terms of technical part.
So interesting. On the customer side, like anything that surprised you, like something that you didn't think would be a big deal, but actually was like really impactful, or maybe something you thought customers would love, but didn't end up liking as much.
Yeah, sure. So there's actually many examples like that. I have on average 1 to 2 customer call a day. So I was asked about that question actually. And I think I would be always surprised that how detail driven some of the customer will be paying attention on the avatar quality, right? The engagement, because I think it is tricky to actually look at someone else's avatar versus you are looking at your avatar on yourself.
Yeah.
You will have a much higher bar in that case. And then I think I also learn new things from talking to customer. And I would say The second thing is that we always wanted to make I think the streaming avatar is one example that we try to have the avatar team talk with the customer in real time, but I think we still need to improve the performance out there, and I think getting a lot of feedback around that. I guess we need to continue to improve on this front.
What's the most detailed piece of avatar feedback you've gotten? A really in the weeds
Sure. So I was talking to a customer actually yesterday. I said last night he's in Europe, and I think he gave a lot of feedback around the gesture. Yeah. Right. So he produced avatar video longer than 6 minutes. Actually 5 or 6 minutes. And he was complaining about, one of the pain points that the customer had is that, sometimes the gesture of the person does not match the script or the content. And, but it was fine in the first few minutes, and it would start to move around the gesture randomly at the end of the video. And then, that was not easy to identify unless you actually make a much longer video. And and then he actually gave a lot of feedback around how he would like that avatar to behave in terms of, in this session and that session, not only the body motion, but also the gesture. And I found that very, very amazing, yeah.
That's so cool. Which AI startup, outside of the video world, are you most excited about right now?
This is probably not a startup, but definitely a new generative AI product. It's a Google Notebook LM. I'm not sure if you look at that, but it was a very, very cool technology, in my opinion, that you can put in a blog post and some text or URL, and then it would generate a podcast format in the video format, in the audio format. And what was funny is that
I better watch out. That sounds like it's coming from me.
Yeah. And what's funny was that I send out a weekly product updates myself to the entire company every week, and I did one yesterday, and then and I've kind of feed in my entire product updates into the Google Notebook LM, and then it generates a soundbite for 2 minutes voice, and then I share it with him, and they love it. And because now you can actually listen your product in the podcast format with two people actually talking in a conversation way. Yeah, I really, really like that.
If only there were avatars to put on top of that.
Yeah, that the next step is actually turned into an audio podcast and a video interview.
Yeah. Well, I guess before I leave the last word to you, my last question that's shamelessly broad is just, what do you think video creation workflows look like in 2030? If we fast forward way in the future, what's your vision for kind of where this is all going? When people are learning this, and this next generation when they learn this.
I always have a very simple mental model to think about how HeyGen as a product will evolve, and what are the problem, where is the bar in terms of building product experience for the customer. Is that I always imagine when I need to create a video, I would imagine I have a video agency sit right next to me, right? And if you try to think about it, what is the process look like for you to create a video with a video agency? You talk about your ideas first, step 1. Step 2, the video agency will help you to film the footage. And then once they have the footage, step 3 is that they go to editing, and then they present it to you, and then you give some feedback, and then they go back to edit it. And then we have the final video. I think, 5 years from now, I would say everybody will have their video agency on the pocket, right? So where hopefully HeyGen provide that experience that you can actually interact with HeyGen with the product, and like you're talking to a specific personal video agency for you. I think that is the ultimate vision that or experience we want to enable.
Yeah. What do you think people will make with that? Obviously, you've seen this first wave of use cases on the first generation of HeyGen. The 2030 version. What do you think some of the things we might make?
Sure. So I think the way how we really look at it is that, obviously, any type of text content, audio content, or video content we are making today can be generated with AI in that way, in a much faster, lower cost, right? I think, but when we look at the power of a creative tool, is that you open up new use cases. There's many use cases you actually don't know, right? I think one example I always want to go back is like, right, cool. Imagine in 2012, when we have a mobile camera, do we actually know we will have an Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and this type of content, today? It's very, very hard to do it, to imagine like that. But I think what's really powerful with the creative tool is that when you improve the tool, when you lower down the creation barrier, you will open up a whole new world that I'm very, very excited to explore what people will be doing with that.
Yeah. You're obviously so passionate about the space. Like, did you grow up really into this, or was it when you joined Snap, or when, how did this kind of come about?
Sure. I think, definitely highly related to my experience at Snap, working with, a lot of product and growing together with the company and, watching a lot. I always consider myself, I grew up my career in the, mobile platform era, right? So that when actually mobile camera evolved, and then when we actually saw all this different type of content platform emerge, like Instagram, Snap, and TikTok, we talk about. And definitely put a lot of thoughts around it. And I think personally, I felt, the most joy for me come from when I create something, people use my technology, use the tool that I build to create something on their own. I think that brings me the most joy.
Yeah. Well, super cool. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of threads folks will want to pull on. I'll leave the last word to you. Where can folks go to learn more about HeyGen, about you, anywhere you want to point them?
Sure. Yeah, I think definitely go visit heygen.com to try out the product. It's free to sign up, and it's also free to create your own avatar.
Amazing. Well, Joshua, thanks so much. This has been an amazing conversation.
All right. Thank you, Jacob.